Hello, everyone. Today we continue looking at the long-term effects of Alexander the Great's conquest. In the wake of Alexander the Great's conquest, cities throughout the Eastern Mediterranean and the Middle East became more diverse. You had many new ethnicities, peoples, cultures, languages, and varieties of thought all intermingling. And so the Greeks began to see strangers, foreigners, people from all over the world, and this really did affect the way they thought about humanity. Ancient Greek philosophers began to see humanity as one single entity, just split into different cultures. But there's a unity behind these diversities and pluralities of ethnicities, cultures, languages, and peoples. In many ways, Greek Stoicism laid the foundation for a single unified humanity. That is like, look, we may be Greek, you may be from this land and that land, but at the end of the day, we're all the same. And Alexander the Great's conquest and forcing these people to come in contact with each other made that abundantly clear. In many ways, Stoicism was the ideology of a global empire. It had a way of rationalizing everyone's differences and essentially ignoring them by focusing on the similarities between all peoples. Stoicism was an ideology that could easily justify and rationalize a global empire spanning all of humanity. Now, it was Zeno of Citium who founded the school of thought that we today call Stoicism. Citium was a city in Cyprus, but Zeno began his teaching career in Athens, Greece. In the aftermath of Alexander the Great's conquest, those followers of Zeno articulated and espoused, talked about new ideas involving the human soul and how we all relate to each other. In this new perspective, the human soul is constant, that is, in every human being. Now, the implications for equality are as follows. Every human being has the same exact soul. It doesn't matter who you are, what your wealth is, or what your status or ethnic origins. The Stoics fundamentally argue that all human souls possess the capability to exhibit reason, to rationally analyze the world around them. Many Stoics believe that if this is the case, then all social hierarchies are contrary to nature, though no Stoics ever advocated for the end of slavery or the equal treatment of women. It was fundamentally this ability to reason and think logically which made us all equal. This was because the core of Stoic thought argued that reason was the underlying principle of the universe. They used several names to describe this underlying principle: the divine fire, God, and divine reason, or as they called it, the Logos. Now, this was not a monotheistic God that we associate with the Abrahamic religions. This God that the Stoics envisioned was more pantheistic, more spread out. God was everything and everyone. In this conception, God was a overmind that spoke through individuals, that spoke through the soul embedded in every human being. The ability to reason and think meant that you were a reflection of this greater divinity underlying everything. The Logos was implanted in every human soul. It enabled people to act intelligently. It enabled people to comprehend nature, the environment, everything around them. And it allowed human beings to create a social order in which they set the rules. According to the Stoics, human beings were destined to be ruled by reason. Now, these ideas heavily influenced American ideas of equality. Because if we look at the Stoics, they argue that each human being was equally capable of reasoning. Therefore, every human being was equal, alike, the same. This idea is at the root of our modern ideas of freedoms and liberties. That is, you have rights by virtue of your birth, by virtue of existing. The American Declaration of Independence says all men are created equal. Not all American men, not all Americans, but all men, period. That was a statement of humanity and their views that we're all alike, that we are all governed by the same principles. Reason meant that you were to be treated with dignity, and therefore you were to use your own reason to treat other human beings with dignity, to treat other human beings as equals like yourself. The Stoics believed that a truly good man would approach others with justice and moderation. To the Stoics, all people, Greek, barbarian, free and slave, rich and poor, were fellow human beings. They were all governed by the reason, by a single law. In many ways, the Greek Stoics pioneered the idea of the world citizen in Western civilization. Zeno himself rejected the idea of citizenship being an attribute of birth. For Zeno, the true citizen was not an individual who belonged to a specific physical location or a specific community residing in that physical location. Rather, a true citizen was a a person who harbored certain ideas about other human beings. In Zeno's eyes, a true citizen was an individual capable of possessing virtue, that is, understanding your place in the world and your relation with other human beings, and how to behave toward other human beings and toward society. In Zeno's eyes, your birth counted for nothing. There was no logical reason, he believed, why your birth in a particular community made you a member of that community. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus reflected this train of thought. To paraphrase his words, we're never supposed to respond to the question of where are we from with the physical location of our birth or the community and group we were born into, but rather we're supposed to say that we are a citizen of the world, open and tolerant of all individuals, open to seeing all individuals as equal to us. In our story of American equality, the Romans play a massive role. In fact, many of the Greek Stoic ideas, these ideas of equality, these ideas that everyone has reason, were assimilated into Roman culture and therefore the Roman Empire. With the coming of the Romans and their conquests, the Greeks eventually lost their independence. And the Romans were absolutely fascinated with Greek culture. The Roman poet Horace reflected this with a statement, quote, "Captured Greece captured its fierce conqueror." One of the aspects of Greek culture that the Romans were absolutely infatuated with was Greek Stoicism. And there were several ways in which Greek Stoicism influenced Roman culture. The idea of a world citizen helped the Roman Empire as an empire who frequently conquered and incorporated different nations into a single city, Rome itself. Moreover, the Romans end up preserving Greek culture and incorporating Greek culture into Roman civilization. In many ways, the Romans finish what the Stoics started. The Stoics believed that we should see ourselves as members of a single world community, where the Romans actually attempted to build that world community. Rome had come much, much further than the Greeks in making the idea of a global citizen and a world community a reality. The universal nature of Stoicism was reflected in the diversity of its adherents. You had Cicero, for instance. Cicero has been widely regarded as a master of Roman rhetoric. In fact, he was the first Roman politician to receive an office not based on his military experience, but rather his oratory skills. You also have Lucius Annaeus Seneca, also known as Seneca the Younger or just Seneca. He was skilled as a politician and received a prominent post in his 30s. He reached the upper echelons of Roman society and Roman politics. But unfortunately, the success ended up being his downfall. He was accused of participating in a plot to kill the Roman Emperor Nero. And Seneca's death has been rightly regarded as the embodiment of Stoic philosophy. Now, we've covered Stoicism from the angle of equality, but if you read about Stoicism before, you most likely would have heard it as a philosophy that teaches you how to deal with your emotions and how to deal with challenging life circumstances. And Seneca's death has been used throughout the centuries as a model for how he lived and died by his Stoic values. And then we have Epictetus. Many details of Epictetus' life are unknown. He was born around 55 CE in the historical city of Hierapolis. Much unlike the high-born Stoics discussed above, Epictetus was a slave. In fact, he was still a slave when his master granted him permission to attend lectures by none other than Musonius Rufus. Rufus being, of course, a Stoic philosopher spreading the ideas of Stoicism. Soon thereafter, it seems, Epaphroditus freed Epictetus from his service as a slave. Epictetus began his own teaching career in Rome. He then moved to the city of Nicopolis in Greece, where he opened a school and earned his living by teaching philosophy. Epictetus spent most of his remaining days devoted to his teaching activity there in Nicopolis, where he died around 135 CE. And then you also have none other than Marcus Aurelius, Roman emperor. Marcus Aurelius embodied Stoic philosophy in his meritocratic appointment of Roman officials, particularly when it came to the promotion of Publius Helvius Pertinax. Marcus Aurelius drew on men whose background is often obscure but who could be trusted to protect the Roman Imperium, and Pertinax was no different. Pertinax was the son of a former slave and began his career as a centurion, fought for the Roman Empire and endeavored to enlarge Rome's dominions. And his abilities did not escape the watchful eye of the emperor. Pertinax rose through the ranks of Roman society, becoming a senator and eventually an emperor himself. And these positions were normally reserved for those of equestrian rank, equestrians being a social class composed of individuals who could contribute more wealth to finance the empire. Nonetheless, Marcus Aurelius collected his Stoic ideas into his personal diary writings. Historians, being the invasive bastards we are, collected his writings into a book we now know today as Meditations. He wrote his Stoic reflections while on campaign during the Marcomannic Wars, a conflict of the Romans versus various German tribes. Meditations is a book which embodies classical Stoic ideals, such as being emotionally balanced and accepting life as it is. And this is what makes Stoicism so fascinating to study, that some of its most well-known practitioners came from widely disparate backgrounds and origins. And that is also what makes Stoicism so powerful. It can and has throughout time provided timeless principles to help individuals overcome the sufferings of life, to help us in both good fortune and also in bad fortune, no matter who we are, where we're born, or where we're from.